quite sure what the other 10% want. But 80% of people die in institutions or nursing homes generally, and many of them die not surrounded by family and friends, but by machines and strangers in blue scrubs, hooked to machines, in pain, afraid. You know, their arms lashed down at the bed so they don't pull at the tubes. You know, most people, or a lot of people, even when they have advance directives, die exactly as they don't want to. And so I wanted to find out why this was happening. Why do people who have made a promise or written an advance directive die so horribly in this country? And after many years of research, I discovered that doctors are partly to blame. None of the doctors in this room, of course, are partly to blame, but doctors are generally poor guides at this. They delay or avoid giving bad news. They use euphemisms. They knowingly overtreat patients. The system isn't great. We cover aggressive care much more readily than we cover counseling or palliative care. Hospice is often a giant leap from one kind of care to another kind of care rather than a smooth continuum. But mostly what I found, and I was surprised by it, was that the problem is us, that we, the loved ones, are ultimately calling the shots. And regardless of what the system does or what the doctors say, that at the end of the day, families have the last word. And because they come to this so totally unprepared, they make poor decisions. I think people think they know what they're going to do, they think they're prepared, but suddenly standing at that bedside with somebody that they love dying and their heart breaking, the decisions are far more difficult and the emotions far more acute than they had expected. And suddenly they're willing to forgo, they're not willing to forgo any chance, even a slim chance, of giving this person a little more time. And they're not ready to say goodbye, and they say, do something. I spent a lot of time walking around ICUs and saying, well, why is that person in that situation? And well, we tried to tell the family, but they want us to keep treating. They want us to keep going. You know, I think most people in this room know the reasons. I mean, we're unprepared for this in part because we just don't grow up with it in this country. We have no experience with it, and people are often 40, 50, 60 years old the first time they really are at a bedside seeing somebody that sick. Not only don't we see it, I think we actually think on some level we don't have to do it. And if we just eat our green leafy vegetables and jog enough miles, we could avoid it completely. And sometimes when you hear people have died, you'll sort of immediately think, well, you know, what did they do wrong? You know, did they smoke? Did they wear their seatbelt? Did they eat too many Twinkies? You know, why are they there? Because I'm not going to be there. And we have this sort of blind faith in medicine, and that if we just keep searching, there is a cure out there and that we'll find it. Death, I think, isn't part of our physical lives. It's not part of our spiritual or cultural lives. We have no place for mortality in our life. Many cultures, everything is about kind of preparing for death. And in this culture, we really don't do that at all. So we enter this room of a very sick person that we love with no experience, no role models, no training, just maybe a legal document, one page, and a quick promise of what we're going to do. My own father, who was a doctor and actually involved with hospice at various times in his life, just said to us, look, when I'm there, take me out with the garbage. And that was all the instructions we had. I think also in recent years, medical advances have changed all the questions. So we think we know what to do, but the questions aren't what we expect. So it's not this clear line. Instead, it's odds and possibilities, and well, there's a 30% chance that this treatment would do this for him, but it's going to be painful, and we're deciding about surgery and antibiotics and transfusions, dialysis, experimental treatments, and suddenly it's, well, wait, what did this advance directive mean? What are we going to do? Does he really want to be thrown out with the garbage? So even if you know what this person wants, are you, as the loved one, really prepared to say stop? I think millions of years of evolution has created in us an incredibly strong instinct to live, our very strongest instinct to live. So, when the saber-toothed tiger had you in his grasp, you were going to fight like heck to get out of there. And if you were the guy hiding behind the rock, you were going to be throwing stones and sticks to fight this thing. And that's very deep in us. And if you're not prepared, if you haven't sort of thought this out in advance, those instincts are going to win out, and you're going to say, do something. Most deaths today occur after some decision is made to either keep going with treatment, stop treatment. We are going to be standing at that bedside making these decisions, every one of us. It happens in every hospital in this country every day. So we need to prepare, we need to learn, we need to talk about it. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, but we need to know how these decisions are made and what our role is going to be. And we have to do it long before an illness is upon us, because I find talking to families, it's way too difficult to do this at the time. You have to do it, or it's much easier to do long before there's anything there, and it's very theoretical. So that's why I wrote the book. I just wanted somebody to be able to skim through it and be able to start these conversations and get people thinking so they would know something. And I do want to talk to you about some of those issues that I think we need to do. But before I do that, I need to talk a little bit about what is a good death and what is our goal here, because I had to spend a lot of time thinking about that issue. I don't want to romanticize death. I think if we're imagining a Hollywood death, if we're picturing, I don't know who, Holly Hunter, lying on her bed with her makeup perfect and her eyelashes fluttering and saying goodbye, and or if we have some bizarre thought of what death with dignity means, we're going to be set up for failure, because death is difficult. It's painful. It's often ugly. It's death. I mean, it takes a long time to get somebody into this world, and it takes a much longer time to get them out of this world. So I think we need to really think about what we're after here. Also, bringing somebody home, which sounds so wonderful, isn't simple. There's hospital beds and oxygen tanks and commodes and a lot of stuff involved. There's pain and suffering. And having somebody 24/7 right there is challenging. It's a lot of physical work. It's a lot of emotional work. So I just don't want people to feel like there's this beautiful angelic vision. Furthermore, sometimes no matter what you do and what you know and how you've prepared, somebody is going to die in an ICU, or they may die in a lot of pain. This stuff happens. It maybe is going to happen to my loved ones, and I wrote the book. So, you have to know that you can only do your best and give your little bit. You can't sort of have this target of perfection. I have to tell you a little story, because early in my research, and I was following around with a hospice worker, and I didn't know a whole lot about this, and I can't see anything. I walked into a room that I just want to describe for you. There was a man lying on a bed. He had throat cancer. Most of the lower part of his face had been removed. His tongue was so swollen he couldn't close his mouth. It just looked sort of gruesome. He was thin, he was lifeless. There was a stack of dark towels next to his bed, and the nurse explained to me that if the cancer went into his carotid artery, he would essentially die in sort of a geyser of his own blood. I mean, it sort of undid me. But I sat there for a while watching this scene, thinking how I didn't want to die that way. And I started to see other things in this room. And I saw his adult children sitting there speaking softly to him. And I realized these children had been estranged from him for a long time. He'd been a mean alcoholic. And they had been not in contact with their father.